Hey, good to see you guys.
How's it going? Nice to meet you. I'm Joe.
Nice to meet you, Joe. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hi, Chris. Nice to meet you. I'm Stephanie.
And Dallin, I'll be giving the local and state update, but won't be on the panel. Should I disappear?
Yeah, I think we can put you down as a, I think I can just move you to just like a regular, actually, I don't know. I might have to send you a different link, and then when it's your turn, I can promote you into it, if that works.
Okay.
Yeah, or if you just go to the link and register for it, it'll give you just a participant link.
Cool. All right, guys. See you in a sec.
Cool. All right.
Hi, Hirsch.
Bye.
Cool. Any preliminary items we should discuss?
I don't think so. The way I kind of wanted to kind of go through this was starting with state policy. I thought we'd talk about AB 1014 for a minute, just talk about the increase in case pack limit, get people's thoughts there on what's good or bad about it for delivery companies, consumers, how it might change the marketplace. If there's any thoughts on that as pertains to delivery versus storefront, I think delivery is probably a much more attractive approach to retail for consumers, especially coming out of the pandemic, but just curious as to people's thoughts on that piece. Then from there, I thought we could kind of stay on state policy as it drives into local, talk a little bit about the 25 city suit case that was thrown in Fresno Superior Court last year, and just kind of give folks in the audience an understanding about what does that really mean for folks in the delivery space, for cities, for consumers. What can we expect to come out of that? Are we seeing any more punitive actions from local governments on delivery companies as a result? And then just kind of giving folks really an understanding, like, what does it mean for the marketplace? From there, I thought we could kind of drive right into local policy and start talking about some of the permutations of policy we've seen, challenges in the local government policy world, and kind of that whole space.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the most imminent stuff that I'm dealing with is SB 59 related, as for provisional licensing, and then the June 30 deadline for CEQA compliant local ordinances. So a lot of my work in Northern California is just totally overwhelmed by these CEQA issues and these provisional licensing issues. And so I think there's a real drive right now to work on those things. So there's like 3 different counties that I'm working on policy items in that are all germane to this issue.
So maybe for that piece, I can just kind of open it more general and say, hey guys, kind of what are you guys seeing in terms of local licensing, everything, what's going on out there, what's unique, how are local governments approaching this issue as it pertains to CEQA and associated land use, development agreements, all of that. What do you guys see in the field? Hi, Alana, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Dustin. Thanks for having me.
Hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you. I'm Joe.
Hey, Joe. Alana.
Hey,
Hi,
Alana.
Alana.
Yeah.
Stephanie. Nice to meet you.
Hi, crew.
Great.
Yeah, so it's 4 o'clock. Just give everybody a couple more minutes to get started, and then otherwise, Dustin, you can go ahead and kick it off whenever you're ready.
I'll just give it a couple of minutes and we'll wait for folks to dial in, and then we can get started.
Cool.
Well, 2 minutes into the hour, I think we can go ahead and get started here. I want to thank our panelists as well as everybody who's tuning in for this great Cannabis Chamber of Commerce event on the subject of the cannabis delivery licensing category and permutations on policy here in California. To folks who are tuning in and unaware of cannabis delivery, it's a phenomenon. You should definitely get on board with it. We have a great lineup of speakers today to kind of chop through material that really kind of revolves around state policies pertaining to cannabis delivery, what went on with the delivery lawsuit that emerged in 2019 with 25 cities trying to sue the state of California over delivery, how that's impacting delivery businesses, patients and consumers, and kind of everybody in the space. Delivery as a licensing category is certainly a challenging one. And I applaud folks who are working in that space to be that link of retail to consumers from manufacturers and retail, but it's an extremely challenging licensing category to work in. Not only do you have a large population of unlicensed operators constantly trying to steal your lunch, but you also had, as I mentioned, 25 local governments trying to sue the state over your ability to deliver into their jurisdictions. And that was before we found out a couple of weeks ago that Uber is very interested in moving into the delivery space once federal regulations are changed related to scheduling or rescheduling of cannabis. So a lot to cover here today, and we have a great lineup of panelists to chop through this material. So let me introduce them now. We have Joe Rogaway of the Joe Rogaway Law Group. Joe's been a longtime attorney in this space and has a lot of thoughts to offer us today on this front. We have Stephanie Yui with us, who handles government relations and licensing for Southern California delivery company Amuse. We also have Alana Joyce with us, who's the Chief Compliance Counsel for delivery behemoth Ease, as well as Christopher Del Olio, who's the CEO of the leading cannabis delivery software platform called WebJoint. So thank you all for joining us for this great discussion today. With no further ado, we can kind of jump right in and get started with the discussion on state policy. So there at the state level, we have legislation pending that would increase the case pack load size for cannabis delivery companies from $5,000 to $10,000. So I thought we could kind of start there with the discussion, and maybe we can go to you first, Stephanie, and get a sense about what this legislation means. Is it good for folks in the delivery space? How does it help delivery cannabis businesses? Does it change the paradigm at all in terms of delivery versus storefront retail, as delivery maybe being a more attractive licensing category to get into? And then overall, how do we see how this legislation, if it were to pass, might aid consumers and patients who are constantly trying to grapple with securing legal access in a state where the vast majority of local governments don't authorize retail?
Thank you so much, Justin, for the question. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here today. Yeah, so let's get into it. AB 1040, McCarty's bill. So this actually had a hearing yesterday in Approps. And basically what this bill does is it mandates the BCC to develop safety standards based on the value and the vehicle type. And also it raises the case value, the amount of cannabis product you're able to hold in different types of delivery vehicles. So as you mentioned, for a car, they're proposing $15,000, and for a cargo van, $25,000. So as Dustin mentioned, as delivery operators, we are at a disadvantage. There are so many illicit operators who carry, much greater than the, $5,000 limit. So what this would do is really help us, compete with the illicit market and just really optimize our operations. Having that limit, it forces our drivers to have to come back to the depot to get more product, more orders, instead of being able to cover a larger geographic area and be able to really optimize their routes and stay out there longer. So, off the bat, it would just really unlock a lot of efficiencies for delivery operators and be able to compete better with, the illicit market and just, better serve our customers.
Got it. Thank you, Stephanie. Other thoughts on the panel from Alana, from Joe, from Christopher?
Yeah, I mean, I'll step in. I think it's definitely necessary for us to have on the delivery side to carry more product in the vehicle. Just like Stephanie was saying, drivers are heading back to the facility to pick up more product. If they can stay out and about longer, then especially if they're operating on the kit model, typically the reason why operators do that is because they can expand their coverage. So if you can stay out and about longer and carry a larger array of SKUs. Then the product offering is also much larger for those who want quick, efficient delivery. And we're living in an age where cannabis has showed us this new style of delivery. And people are blown away sometimes with getting 5-minute delivery times, depending on how close the driver is. So, I think it's definitely necessary for us to increase that and, keep pushing for that for these delivery services. The only other thing that I would be concerned about is security, especially for the smaller mom and pop deliveries. We're on the software side, providing software as a service to the smaller operators as well. So, larger operators probably have better processes in place to, to maintain that security, but, definitely want to make sure that we, keep that in mind as well.
Beyond the increase to allow compliant delivery drivers to carry more product, I guess, are we seeing any other core issues that exist on the ground in jurisdictions pertaining to delivery that we think the state should try to address outside of taxes, which I think there's been a fair amount of discussion about, but are there any specific aspects to this licensing category that folks in the space are grappling with it beyond this legislation offered by Assemblyman McCarty would do something to help improve not only how these businesses operate and efficiencies they might be able to realize, but also in actually delivering to consumers, which seems to be still a gap where we still continue to see a glut of these unlicensed operators, as many of you on the license side try to do business.
I mean, from my vantage point, local bans is one area that I think we can improve upon, and having some assurance at a state level that a locality wouldn't be able to ban it. I think that right now there still remains some ambiguity on this issue because of the lawsuit issues that we're going to discuss in a moment. But if we can prevent an enforcement action from a delivery service going into a jurisdiction having a problem there, I see that as being really important as we go forward. But part of that is also these delivery caps also benefit the consumer in so many jurisdictions where it's hard to get to, where there isn't licensed delivery anywhere near them. And the delivery company, they need to be able to justify going way out somewhere to deliver and to be able to have that dynamic model. So I can see it being beneficial in, from that vantage point, concerning AB 1014. But ultimately, I think that the large sort of elephant in the room overarching issue is just really making sure that that companies are safe, abiding by current state law that says that they can deliver anywhere, and not have some cowboy jurisdiction try to instigate an enforcement action.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what Joe said, as we have these businesses that are pop up and supporting the legal market, it is important that we have assurances from the state that the models that we're operating under and investing under are models that are going to stay put. So, the state and the legislature time and time again have reaffirmed that we can deliver using local roads, and, to go against that now after, these delivery businesses have invested so much in delivery, just seems counterproductive, especially for two reasons: not just combating the illicit market, but also just providing safe, legal access to cannabis. And Dustin, you mentioned this earlier, we live in a state where most jurisdictions don't actually have cannabis retailers. So there's still so much of the state of California and so many of the consumers in this state that don't have access. And I think when you're competing against the illicit market, the best way to compete against them is to be fast and efficient. And, this bill gives us some assurances that we can do that a little bit better than we're doing it today. And I think Joe's spot on that having that assurance that delivery cannot be banned by a locality would also be a really great addition as well. For sure. And I think it'd also save a lot of small operators time and money from having to litigate it later.
Yeah, which they don't have.
Yes,
You know,
exactly.
like litigation is expensive. This is the last thing any business wants to deal with, and enforcement actions are really no fun. So yeah, there's a lot of benefit to this.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a great segue right into the discussion about the 2019 lawsuit brought by 25 California local jurisdictions, including some cities and counties across the state, against the Bureau of Cannabis Control, basically asking the Bureau of Cannabis Control to say that if you're a compliant cannabis delivery company working in jurisdiction A, you can't deliver into jurisdiction B if jurisdiction B has a ban on local delivery. So Fresno Superior Court threw that case out last year. What does it mean for folks on the delivery space operating as a business? What does it mean to consumers? What does it mean, if it means anything? Maybe you could get us started on that one, Joe, and then also chat a little bit about next steps, our chat with California AG's office, and anything else that you guys have kind of seen out there in the field in the wake of all of that. But I thought, Joe, given your work in the space, you might be a great person to kick us off on this part.
Yeah, absolutely. So to answer your first question, it means nothing. It's a Superior Court order that has no legal binding effect on any other court for any other purpose at all. It's only relevant to that case. And basically what the Superior Court said in Fresno is that the case just wasn't right to be adjudicated. And part of their justification was basically finding a way to boomerang back around the BCC's own arguments to get the case tossed out, because that's essentially what the judge wanted to do. So, you know, as you and I discussed previously, Dustin, I feel like this case doesn't have a lot of significance in and of itself that will ripple across the industry, because it's just, by operation of law, it's confined only to this case. And this case is been dismissed. So there's basically anything else that could arise from it is essentially moot. However, the legal issues have not been resolved. So we have this situation where the regulation section 5614 subsection D says that basically, if you're a delivery service, you can deliver to any physical address in the state of California. And we have all these localities that say that you can't deliver into their locality. And so that friction has not been resolved. However, I think that ultimately the law is on the side of essentially what the Bureau was articulating there, which is that the way that our regulations are structured, the whole sort of conception of it is that what is regulated is where the businesses are domiciled, where the businesses exist. That is what the locality, under the police powers afforded to them by the California Constitution and sort of just reiterated under Prop 64, they have the ability to control, under the police powers doctrine, whatever happens within their jurisdiction, be it a county or incorporated city. And so that is true. What is not true is regulating the destination. And I think that there's really cogent arguments that localities can't regulate the destination, because that's not where the commercial cannabis activity is occurring for purposes of this analysis. In the same way, and to Alana's point, which is, this is why you can drive on the 405, on 101, whatever it is. And if you drive through a jurisdiction that has a ban, you're passing through temporarily. That jurisdiction does not constitute a violation of that ban, because what is banned is the where the facility is domiciled, where that license would attach to, and the fact that the local jurisdiction has elected to not issue permits, which means that then that applicant would no longer be eligible for a later state license. So I think that ultimately what's going to happen, and the way that this is going to play out, is that a delivery service is going to deliver into a jurisdiction that has a ban. And in some manner, there is going to be an enforcement action that happens pursuant to that. It could even be like a sting. There could be like some undercover governmental law enforcement authority that orders that delivery for the purpose of essentially instituting this type of enforcement action so that they have something to challenge. It could be kind of impact litigation reverse in that way. Or it could just be an enforcement action because they don't want that in their jurisdiction. But I think that if that were to be the case, then these same types of arguments that the Bureau was utilizing in the Fresno case are the same or the similar type of arguments, not exactly the same, but similar arguments that whoever that delivery service is would bring, and then they would have standing because they're the ones that are impacted, or the consumer would have standing to raise an issue if there was some intervention with like a third-party consumer that, let's say, had ease or somebody else delivering over to it, then they would have standing. That issue would be ripe. And then essentially that locality would have to argue that they have the ability to regulate delivery into their jurisdiction. And I don't think there's a lot of law that supports that.
So quick recap for folks that don't understand necessarily the legal language behind all of this. So what we hear coming out of the Fresno Superior Court case is essentially there's no verdict to be had. Things are essentially the way they were before. And we're sitting around waiting for either a local government to organize some kind of sting like this where they could arrest some compliant delivery company that was compliant in another jurisdiction and compliant with the state, but perhaps that jurisdiction that would be looking to conduct the enforcement action does not have delivery policy, and they'd be looking to make that arrest to create a case. So that's kind of where we are now. So in terms of kind of pivoting to what we're seeing on the ground locally in the wake of that, what are folks seeing? What are you seeing in the field? What are you seeing, Stephanie and Alana and Christopher? What have you guys seen in the wake of all that? Is there a drive for these local governments? Have you seen a motivation by them? Have you in talking to local government associations and their regional counterparts, heard from them about wanting to go down a road like that, or be more punitive, or organize more enforcement and more punitive regulations around delivery? Or to the point made earlier, does it seem like there's more of a loosening and a relaxing by local governments of cannabis and more of a willingness to at least go down that road of authorizing delivery?
I can jump in here. I think it really just depends on where you are. Like, it's no secret in the state of California that we have some very liberal cities and counties, and we have some very conservative cities and counties. And I do think the culture around cannabis is changing as we do more education, but that is going to be kind of a lifelong battle of educating people about delivery, how it's regulated in California, even just under the state regs. I think a lot of localities don't even know how the state regulates delivery in and of itself. And so, for our retailers, we will reach out, and we've seen probably everything that you can see at a locality. So beyond the straight bans, there have been jurisdictions that we've reached out to that have effectively regulated delivery, but they've regulated so much so that it prohibits delivery. So what I mean by that, if they've come up with some sort of requirement or requirements that you can't comply with. So there's, off the top of my head, there's a jurisdiction that I can think of that requires a motor carrier permit for delivery vehicles, which you can't get. That's impossible to get for delivery vehicles, and also not applicable. They also have a $13,000 license fee a year, and it's a small town. So if you run the economics, you're not going to make that much money delivering into the jurisdiction. And they don't accept cash payments. And it's no secret that this is an industry where payments is a huge issue. So, you have some jurisdictions who are trying to regulate that don't realize they're effectively banning jurisdiction in regulating, and even having conversations with those jurisdictions. You really it's an uphill battle and you don't get any movement. And then we've worked with other cities that say, we call them, we email them, we have phone calls with them to say, hey, we want to make sure we're complying with your local licensing provisions. Your application asks for this. And a lot of times they're regulating as if the business exists in the city rather than outside of the city. So then they kind of have to change up what they're asking for once they find out you're located outside. And I've had conversations with local law enforcement that says, you're the first person to ever apply for this permit. And I don't actually know how I'm supposed to regulate you, but let's make this work. So, so we've definitely been like the first people to apply for licenses in certain jurisdictions. And that's a very collaborative way of working with a local jurisdiction. And then there are some other localities that have, it's just a basic business permit. Some go as far as asking for vehicle lists and driver lists. They have individual IDs. So it really ranges the gamut of what you're seeing. I think we can probably all agree that in the past 6 months to a year, we've seen just a general kind of opening of different jurisdictions who had prohibited all sorts of commercial cannabis activity because they didn't want to be the first. So you see everything in the state of California. We have so many jurisdictions that are prohibiting or regulating to different extents. It would be great if these localities, we know a lot of times localities come to us looking for a model of how they can regulate. I actually think the state is a great model for how you can regulate at the local level, is to just kind of make it mutual. But you see the full gamut in California. We've come across everything.
Indeed. 482 cities and 58 counties, you see it all. What else you guys seeing out there?
Yeah, I mean, just to, kind of second off that, I mean, I currently live in Santa Clarita, California. It's more of a conservative city. They've had bans on cannabis licensing. And, just like Alana was saying, no city really wanted to be the first to allow anything even like delivery. But, over the last year, living in the city, actually one of our clients currently delivers into the city. Been seeing grass door billboards everywhere now. And I think that for a lot of operators as well, especially, because we work with a lot of the independents, it's really like the fear of having to potentially deal with litigation, and also, if anything were to happen, it would completely eradicate that part of their customer base, and, having to deal with that as well. So, but, over time, I've been seeing a lot of, actually, I'm actually in Las Vegas right now at a business conference. And, on the way up here, I've seen in a lot of cities, even where I'm from, Palmdale, California, which is another city that, doesn't allow cannabis retail. Same thing. We're seeing billboards everywhere. And yeah, I think it's over time, we're going to start seeing a lot of cities starting to open up to it and getting more comfortable with it.
Yeah, just to build off.
Especially out that way. Go ahead, Stephanie. What have you seen out in the field?
Yeah, I mean, just what Alana was saying, it really matters like what part of the state you are in is really what you're seeing. I know for us, recently expanded to the Bay Area, and Contra Costa County, they need a health permit, or if you're in Alameda, they need a specific delivery operator permit. So it really puts the onus on us as delivery operators to really do even more diligence to make sure we're checking all the boxes. We have all the permits we need, whether they're big or small, to operate compliantly. And I think what we're really seeing from COVID-19, consumer preferences have really shifted. Everyone wants everything delivered. And so delivery, isn't going anywhere. And, I think small cities are awakening to that. They are, strapped for cash. COVID has really hit them hard, and they're looking for tax revenue. And so a lot of these, jurisdictions that have once banned it are now looking to retail, specifically delivery, to be a source of revenue. And so, we are slowly starting to see that change. And I think a lot of that are lessons that are taken away from COVID.
It's really exciting. I know, I'm the interim policy director for Americans for Safe Access. That's one of the things that we drive really hard at with states and local governments, is to organize functional delivery models to reach patients where they are, because a lot of patients have ambulatory issues and have trouble reaching a storefront retail facility, which in most states are limited in population for cannabis businesses, because most states have the same reluctance at the local level in opening up functional retail. So delivery is a critical component for access. So great to hear that attitudes are changing with some locals, and there's a greater receptivity to it based on what people experienced under COVID. Did you have some other thoughts, Joe?
Yeah, just actually building off of what you were saying is that I think that delivery is a really good sort of entry level type of business for our jurisdictions that have been prohibitive to start allowing. We saw that in Marin County, where Marin County, the first type of licenses that they allowed as a county were non-storefront retail delivery. They had like a lottery process, et cetera. And I think that it's easier because it's not public facing. There's no, it's like having a distribution facility essentially. So a lot of times these businesses are relegated to more industrial type zoning areas, sometimes like heavier kind of commercial areas, but largely industrial. And, people aren't going there. So like the kind of what about the children mindset is just really inapplicable, I think, to that. So it's, as I think everyone probably, it seems like we're in agreement, it sounds like the wave may have crested on the prohibitions for delivery in particular, and that as different jurisdictions are opening, delivery is an easier thing for them to conceptualize. It's not having warehouses filled with plants or type 7 manufacturing facilities or storefronts that someone's child could wander into and be poisoned with marijuana. These are things that are just low impact. And in a lot of ways, it's, for the operator, it's relatively low cost compared to having like a storefront retail. So, I think that the tide maybe is changing on this, but, it's not over till it's over. There's a lot of very backwards parts of the state, unfortunately. And I wouldn't put it past some of the places in the middle or towards the top to, do something really draconian.
And one more thing I'd like to add as well. I think that COVID has shown us how essential that cannabis is truly been in California. And, with the surge that we've seen in the peak of quarantine, delivery demand surged as high as 300%. And if you have, individuals that live in a city that don't allow cannabis retail, but also don't want to leave their house to go to somewhere that, to an actual dispensary, I think that might be another reason why they might be more comfortable with, allowing this.
Yeah. And I, couldn't agree with both of you more, Joe and Chris. I've long time extolled the virtues of delivery for all of those reasons. And it's nice to see local governments kind of starting to wake up to, hey, this is a little bit less scary version of retail that we can still offer consumers here and do something about cleaning up the illegal market, addressing public health and safety costs and challenges, and still providing safe and legal access to consumers. So excited to hear that tide might be turning a little bit. And also, with respect to the points you raised, Chris, out in Palmdale, Lancaster, that whole area, you're talking about a largely rural area where consumers are generally disconnected from wherever their main street might be. So delivery really is kind of a great business model for rural areas. Thoughts there from folks on the panel on in terms of delivery in urban versus rural environments? It seems like it's kind of the perfect threading the needle in both marketplaces.
Yeah, I would concur with that.
Yeah, I think one point I wanted to kind of add in this like rural versus like urban setting, tying back to AB 1040, is that, this bill introduces like new categories, car, cargo, van, but a lot of industry groups are really pushing for, scooters, things that aren't a car, what's, allowed now. And I think that's really going to change the game. It's really going to revolutionize like the customer experience and really grow the delivery sector of retail. If we are able to have scooters able to, wind in and out of downtown LA, that's going to be a lot more efficient than, trying to move a cargo van. So I think, using the opportunity of legislation to kind of address rural specific, urban specific settings.
And isn't that all about bias, really? In the early days, it was get an armored car for your cannabis, have an armed security agent sitting shotgun, literally. And now that just sounds so ridiculous.
About scooters.
Yeah, so scooters, just have someone zipping through. San Francisco, another great example of why that could be really beneficial. But yeah, I think that, security and the bias as it relates to cannabis is, one of the main gating items.
Yeah, and I think it's also, educating the consumer on what products are out there too. Back home where I'm from, a lot of people that I know don't really know about the brands and products and consumption methods that are out there compared to people that live in Los Angeles or San Francisco. And people typically go to a dispensary to get educated. So, how do we continue to educate the consumers, using delivery and, online and, getting that information to them so that they can make educated decisions on what they want as well.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that too, Chris. I think that's super important. And delivery, we've all seen delivery and consumer choice for delivery skyrocket with COVID. And not only just being like a safe method to get product to consumers and patients, but delivery also supports the social equity market. We at Ease, we have a social equity menu. And since that menu launched at the end of 2019, we've done over $6.4 million of social equity brands and products on the platform. And, you know, as we try to combat the illicit market, but also, you know, we want to highlight these social equity brands and give them avenues to support their businesses so that they can stay open. Delivery is one avenue for that. And it allows people to be able to learn about these brands, learn about the owners behind their brand and the story, which they can't do otherwise unless they lived in a city or something. So I think, you know, the bill in of itself provides a lot more access for those rural communities, but it could also do a lot more for education as people get deliveries in spots that, you know, could never access cannabis before. And all that goes to combating against the illegal market as well.
And the lower barrier to entry for social equity applicants, especially folks that are getting grant funding. You know, that's not a huge amount of money that gets dispersed. And, you know, to make it actually work in terms of getting a facility, it's hard to see how that happens if it's not delivery. So that's, you know, in some ways like the lowest barrier to entry as well from an entrepreneurial perspective to be able to, you know, get a delivery.
Agreed. In terms of anybody have a run through like one last round of any other thoughts or comments before we turn it over to audience questions, but we have some good stuff coming in on that front too. But any other thoughts that folks had across the panel they want to close out with before we turn it over to questions?
For me, just making sure everybody knows about SB 59 and are supporting SB 59. SB 59 is the extension of state provisional licenses. The vast majority of California licensees are provisionally licensed licensees. And unless SB 59 passes, all those provisional licenses sunset December 31st of this year, which means that without SB 59, we could very easily go backwards and have just a catastrophic situation for our entire commercial cannabis supply chain. So it's really important. Contact your representative. Pay attention to this issue. I think that it's in appropriations right now, and it's going to go to the floor. So we're getting through the process, but we really need everybody's support.
Great point, Joe. Thanks for raising that. Obviously, a huge issue for provisional licensees, as just mentioned, that's the vast majority of the field of commercial cannabis businesses that are legal in the state. We certainly don't want to lose them. So definitely want folks' support there. Other thoughts? Okay, I think with that, we can turn it over to audience Q&A. And right away, we've got a great one coming in as it pertains to security. I know we've gone from armored cars to scooters already in this discussion, but with respect to what folks are seeing out there in the field and what you're utilizing with respect to security, have you needed to ramp up? Have you essentially maintained the same security as we've gone across a pandemic and a national economic crisis? What's been your reality on security front, and where do you see it going?
I think that one of the biggest things that we could do is obviously getting a solution for payment processing, because, you know, it's one thing to roll around with product, but product and cash, you know, just adds that other level of risk. And you know, we've had you know, a couple of delivery drivers that have been robbed before. You know what I mean? So also, you know, just how you're handling the technology as well. You know, with us, we don't, you know, show the driver on the map to kind of give anybody insight on where the driver might be located. To, you know, you don't want to give them too much information, especially when you have that much risk. So, you know, just sending out text message updates about, you know, 5 minutes away, this, that, and the other. Obviously, armored cars and things like that are great, but how, you know, talking about social equity and how it's the lowest, you know, delivery is the lowest barrier to entry for a lot of these operators. They can't, you know, dive right into that. So how do we start somewhere where they can, you know, be safe and then eventually scale into that more sophisticated security?
Just to add to that, yeah, having delivery drivers, you know, face theft or attempts of theft is a regular thing as a delivery operator. So I know for Amuse, we really lean on technology. You know, we have these dash cams that have a view of, you know, both the street, but also of the driver's area. And so we've been able to catch or, you know, see you know, attempted theft in real time and ensure that our staff is safe. You know, we immediately get on the phone with them to make sure they're okay, you know. And so, you know, it's just really utilizing the limited tools that we do have.
I would say, we've done it's been 7 million deliveries we hit at the end of March on the platform over our years operating in the market. And the actual incident rate is actually fairly low. I think it's close to 1%. So, it would be impossible, I think, to get that number to zero, but I definitely think there are things that you can do to limit your exposure to theft and putting the driver at risk, as well as your premises at risk, because there is organized crime out there. However, that actual incident rate is really low, but what I think is incredibly important is training for your drivers that their life is more valuable than anything that is in the vehicle if something happens on the ground. So putting processes in place, having training so that drivers know how to respond, and then using technology as a key to your delivery service. We've been able to when there's fraudulent activity, it's kind of the same thing over and over again that you can predict. And so you can create additional flags. So is it somebody ordering for the first time who has made a large cash only order? That's a little bit suspicious. So maybe adding extra verification checks. Can you call that customer and verify their address and their identity before you actually go and make the delivery? Things like that. So, those types of additional checks, I think, are great. And the processes that you put into place, we've seen incredible results among our dispensaries. But, it is the cannabis industry. We are really lucky that we have a very low incident rate. But, I think maintaining a low profile at the beginning of the legal market, I know there were some delivery companies out there who were driving around in cars that were wrapped with like cannabis delivery, they might have been a bright color. So, just being the reasons why the regulations exist for these delivery vehicles and the safety procedures, like there is a reason behind all that stuff. And I think maintaining a low profile, Chris had, said the great thing. It's unlike the Uber Eats. You can't track your driver or anything like that. You give an updated kind of text about where they are. You're kind of always scrambling their routes. So I think between processes and utilizing technology, you can minimize the incident rate and keep delivery safe. And what we've seen over the past years and 7 million deliveries is that it is a very safe way of conducting deliveries.
And I think a lot of that, that's right.
Go ahead, Joe.
And I think a lot of that success is based on training to make sure that the drivers know how to handle situations like that. And also for the companies themselves to be adequately insured so that they know that if there's a problem, that they have an insurance policy. Let's say that's like a carjacking and there's like a real concern about the delivery vehicle being stolen. If there's a real insurance policy that underlies that they can actually get reimbursed for that cost, that makes a huge difference. And I can tell you, I've had clients, not be compliant in those situations. And it's been, really difficult. I had a situation in Culver City where there was a carjacking and there was a live round that was fired and it just barely grazed the jugular of the delivery driver. And it was close. Like it was like that far away from that person not walking away from that. And, my advice on this is that if anybody has a problem, just give it up. Just give the car up. Hey, here are the keys. Would you like some gas? Like, hey, there's like a drink in the center console, like whatever you need, no problem. Just take it because it's not worth anybody's safety to try and protect that. And so there's just mitigation measures that can be taken. And then also training, I think, is really important.
Those are all exciting solutions to hear. As I think we all know, we saw the House approve the Safe Banking Act about a month ago, but we're still waiting on Senate action of that measure, which will probably be some time before we see that. So great to hear that there's some solutions in the field that everyone's utilizing and some opportunities for folks tuning into this discussion to get a sense of what some of those solutions are that they can plug into their businesses to keep themselves and their drivers and their consumers safe. I think we're about done with our discussion on this panel today. I do want to thank everybody who joined this discussion for serving on this panel and for sponsoring this event, which everyone has done as well. This has been, I think, a great discussion on the ins and outs of some of the core issues around delivery. And so we really thank everybody for your time and for serving on this panel. Did anybody have any last thoughts they wanted to offer before we close this section out and move on to hear from Hirsch about latest and greatest on state and local updates in California?
Just wanted to say thank you for having us all and shedding some light on the issues surrounding delivery.
Yeah, likewise. It was a great panel. Happy to be on with all these great individuals that are, spearheading delivery. So definitely appreciate it and looking forward to, further collaboration.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think a lot of us can attest that for so long, delivery's maybe been the weird stepchild in retail. Everyone wants to go check out the new, Apple-like store and have that in-person experience. So just thank you to the Chamber for, highlighting us as delivery operators and, kind of the barriers and the realities we have to operate within. So thank you so much. Great to share the panel with everyone.
With that, I'll turn it over to Hirsch for the latest on California state legislative and regulatory and local legislative and regulatory updates.
Cool. Thanks, Dustin. Hey, everyone. My name is Hirsch. I'm the chair of the LA Chamber of Commerce. And as Dustin mentioned, I'm just going to be giving a quick update on developments at the state and local level in California. First, we'll talk about just new opportunities that are popping up on the local level. And obviously, California is a really big state. So in this month's update, we're just going to focus on what's going on in Southern California. And secondly, we'll talk about some bills that are moving forward at the state level, including a few that the panel just talked about that really have the potential to impact the industry. So on the first piece, the local update, again, I'm going to be focusing on Southern California. And really, I'm just going to walk everyone through developments that are happening in 5 different regions in Southern California. So that's the San Diego region, Orange County, Los Angeles County, Riverside County, and then sort of the Ventura, Santa Barbara area. And really, I think the story that emerges here is that in each of these counties that sort of comprise the core of Southern California, there are cities that are passing new ordinances at a pretty rapid clip. There are cities that are expanding their existing ordinances. And there are some cities that passed ordinances a while back that are now starting to see new retailers come online. And so I think the exciting thing is we're starting to see just a lot more points of distribution in each of these jurisdictions. So the first one I'll start with is San Diego. So just a quick overview of what's going on in San Diego. First, in the city of San Diego, it's long had 25 dispensaries, but the city is considering revising its zoning rules to allow about 10 more retailers to open up. And so we'll see a big expansion there. And a second thing that we're seeing is San Diego County, which has long had a ban, is likely to pass an ordinance by the end of this year that would authorize all sorts of businesses to open up. So those are 2 really big developments in San Diego County. And then we're seeing smaller cities start to move too. So National City, which is sandwiched right between San Diego and Chula Vista, is about to pass an ordinance. It'll be the first one in the county to allow consumption lounges. So that's super exciting. And what we're kind of seeing with National City is cities moving when their neighbors start to move. So a couple years back, Chula Vista passed an ordinance. There are now retailers coming online there. And so that in part has moved National City to move forward. And then just a couple more examples I'll mention in San Diego County. Escondido, another city that is thinking about passing an ordinance this year. And again, Escondido is right next to Vista, which has a thriving cannabis ecosystem. So that's really moving things forward. And then finally, Encinitas, which is another city that is thinking about passing an ordinance this year. So a ton of new opportunities opening up in San Diego County. In Orange County, we're seeing sort of the first bit of activity. Orange County has just been a huge cannabis desert for many years. Santa Ana is the only place that has had retail, but we're seeing a couple of cities move now. So the first is Costa Mesa. They're in the final stages of passing their ordinance. So we're going to see retailers open up there for the first time. And the second is La Habra, which recently passed a delivery ordinance. So we're going to see 4 delivery operators open up there. So again, OC is still a cannabis desert, but we're starting to see some significant movement. The next region is LA. What I'll sort of spotlight here is, the big one is the city of LA. There are 200 social equity retailers that have been waiting for the first time to come online, but some of those stores should start opening for the first time in June or July. So that's really exciting. And if you think about it, that's 200 operators. There's only about 750 dispensaries in the state. So when the city of LA finally has those stores start to open, that'll add pretty considerably to the sort of retail chain in the state. 2 more regions I'm just going to talk through real quick, and then we'll go on to state updates. So the next region is Riverside County. So one city to pay attention to there is Corona. They have applications that are due next month for 12 retailers. So that'll add substantially to the count in Riverside County. And then the other thing is the county itself is issuing storefront licenses at a pretty rapid clip. They recently passed a law that eliminated any cap on the number of retail licenses they would issue. And if you think about Riverside County, it's huge. It stretches all the way to the Arizona border. And so over the next year or two, we're going to see stores sort of open up all around that county. The final region to talk through is sort of the Ventura, Santa Barbara region. So Ventura recently passed an ordinance and they're going to be accepting applications for a handful of dispensaries next month. So we'll see stores open up there. And then right next to Ventura is Oxnard, which issued about 16 licenses a few months ago. And so some of those stores will start to open later this year. So obviously, and the last one that I'll mention actually is Santa Barbara County, which recently issued 6 storefront licenses. And so we'll see stores start to open up there. So obviously that's a ton of information, but I think the takeaway there is in all of these counties that comprise kind of the core of Southern California, we're seeing stores open, we're seeing cities issue licenses for more stores and cities passing ordinances for the first time. So that's a quick local update. The next piece of this is just a quick state update. It was actually covered pretty well in the panel, so I think I'll be pretty quick here. Just wanted to highlight 3 pieces of legislation that really have the potential to impact the industry, and all of them seem more likely than not to pass this session. So the first is AB 1014. The panelists talked about this in detail, how that would increase case pack value and allow delivery companies to service a much bigger geographic area. That bill seems to have a lot of momentum, and as the panelists mentioned, could really cut into the illicit market. So I think that's one exciting bill to pay attention to. The second was SB 59, which was also mentioned on the panel. This is a bill that really needs our support because it's the foundation of sort of the legal industry in California. The bill would extend provisional licensing until 2028. So it's important to sort of voice your support for that. And then the final bill that I'll mention is AB 45. This is the hemp CBD bill that would legalize hemp CBD as an additive in foods and beverages. And that bill, if you remember, it was introduced in 2019 and 2020 and fell short both times. But this year it seems likely to pass. There's obviously more bills out there, but those are the 3 that I thought were worth highlighting. So that's all I got. Thanks so much.
Thanks for that great update, Hurt. Again, a lot of great information there. Feel free to circle back with us if you need any details on any of this, but a lot of great licensing opportunities emerging across Southern California and up into the central part of the state on the coast. So exciting to plug into all that and stay tuned there. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to today's discussion on delivery. This is another great Cannabis Chamber of Commerce event, and I do want to encourage folks to also stay tuned for a networking event that we have coming up at the end of this month on the 27th. So check back on the Chamber website for that and look at our social media feeds to stay tuned on what's coming down the road there. But thank you all for your time. I hope this was a valuable discussion for everyone. I know it was for our panelists and for myself. Thank you so much for your time and have a great day.